Aloha. It is great to be back here with you. And it's great for a couple reasons. The first, because I'm up here with people that I both know and have served with, and in the case of Admiral Showers, a man I have heard about for a long time, and that I have always had great respect for, and thought to myself, as a cryptologist, I sure hope I get to meet him one day. Never did I think it would end up being here, where he lived out all the events we're going to talk about over the course of the next few days. It's also great because I'm rejoining a team that I left a few years ago. As some of you may know, if you read my biography, I was last out here as the Pacific Command J2. And whatever success I've been able to achieve in my professional life after that has a lot to do with the team that I was a part of here in the Pacific. I miss those days. Many of you I served with are here right now. I loved the people I worked with. I loved the challenge of the problem set out here. I still get energized about it. And then lastly, as the senior cryptologist of the United States Navy, you cannot believe how important this is to me and how fortunate I consider myself to be able to spend some time talking about the Battle of Midway and to do it in a place where it all came together and the knowledge and the insights that in the end generated our success and changed the course of a war in an entire theater all happened within a mile of where we're standing right now. And the other reason I'm very grateful to be here is because of the men and women in formation behind us. Because one thing you never forget as a flag officer, in the end, it's the sailors that really matter. And it was for Admiral Showers, as it is for Admiral Driscoll and I. That is one thing that I think has never changed. And with good leadership, it never is going to change. So what I'm going to talk to you about a few minutes is Midway and kind of the intel and the cryptologic perspective. And when you think about 70 years ago, it is a symptomatic of the power of Midway that we can still remember those names like Spruance, Nimitz, Fletcher, McCluskey, Rochefort, Layton. As a cryptologist, as an intel professional, they are every bit as real to me now. And it is great to see the impact that individuals can have. The thing that makes Midway so amazing to me, when I look back 70 years later, is that it was the crucible as a cryptologist. Midway was the crucible that showed what cryptology could do, particularly when combined with strong intelligence. And it's a result of the success that we enjoyed at Midway that the United States Navy has set a course for the last 70 years that has continued to highlight the importance of cryptology and intelligence. I would not be here standing in front of you today as a 3-star flag officer if it wasn't for men like Joseph Rochefort and Max Showers. Because they took a conceptual discussion and they made it real. And they provided an operational outcome that showed the world just what a strong intelligence and cryptologic team could do when it worked together. And I am very, very proud and happy of that. The other thing that I think about when it comes to Midway is Midway was in so many ways a harbinger of the things that we take for granted today. Intelligence-driven operations. We spent the last 10 years in 2 ground wars, and we have come to accept that as something normal, something that makes very good sense. Well, if you go back 70 years in the Wayback Machine, that isn't the way it was thought of at the time. Joseph Rochefort, Edwin Layton, Max Showers, Jasper Holmes, and others, they helped to show that it was something real, that it was something tangible, that it could deliver, that intelligence could drive operations, that as an operational commander, you could trust the insights and the knowledge that your intel team was generating for you, and you could act on it, and you could take risk. Because there is no greater decision for an operational commander than deciding when it's the right time to roll the dice and take operational risk. And you heard from Admiral Driscoll, you think about the mindset that Admiral Nimitz must have been in. You know, for us, it's all history, and it all makes sense. Go back to May and June of 1942, it's only 6 months after Pearl Harbor. There's still fires and bodies burning in ships in the harbor. There's still bodies being removed from hulls that have overturned, that have sunk. There's still tens of thousands of tons of steel in that water and much more importantly, all too many men. It was something very real and very tangible to the entire team out here. You heard they had come back from Coral Sea, lost 50% of the carrier strike power in that operation. And as Yorktown creeped back into the harbor here, most on board thought they were going in an overhaul for months. And Admiral Nimitz told them, you got a few days, and then you're getting underway and you're going back out again. And this time we're really going to roll the dice, because you're going after an organization, a battle force out there of 6 carriers. And I'm going to trust the knowledge that I have. The other thing that I remember about Midway is the turning point. After the Battle of Midway, we always maintained the initiative. And for the remaining 3 years of the war, the Japanese reacted to us. And for the course of the next 3 years, we shredded their fighting force. And it all started really in May of 1942 with Station Hypo and the work of some great people working together to try to understand what were the Japanese thinking, what were they going to do. That information dominance core idea of today flows exactly from that the right information at the right time can be a powerful operational weapon that gives us an advantage that is second to none. And I'm happy to say that in 70 years, that has not changed. And if anything, we recognize it and we value it even more. I think Midway also shows us gives us some great insights in the intelligence and the cryptologic side. The first is an individual who's been, as I said, the Director of Intelligence here at Pacific Command, and then in my career, the Director of Intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. One takeaway I always remember for Midway is you probably never has as complete of information as you think you do. And despite all the great insights that Station Hypo was able to generate, for example, the Japanese main battle force to the west of Midway was not discovered until the battle actually started. We knew about the carriers, we knew about the transport force, and we knew about the assault force that was going to take Midway, but we didn't have the total picture. And in the end, another lesson that I take from Midway is intelligence and cryptology plays a very powerful role. But don't ever forget that in the end, it's the men and women forward in the battle space who have to close the deal. Now, we're lucky. Today, we've got a lot of intel and cryptologic professionals forward with those men and women in that battle space. And we were just starting to do that in 1942. We actually had small teams of cryptologists and some intel professionals out with Halsey and Fletcher. And what we take for granted today had just started back then. And it's interesting about those commanders. In the case of Nimitz, total confidence in the information he had, enough that he directed this operation be executed. Spruance and Fletcher, as the commanders of Task Force 16 and 17, with Yorktown, Enterprise, and Hornet, had high confidence in the information they were given, and they positioned their force accordingly. Compare that with what happened in Alaska, which most people forget was another aspect of the Midway Command, where the operational commander didn't believe the information he was given. Decided the Japanese wouldn't be interested in the western Aleutian Islands, they must want to go much closer to Alaska. He tended to focus on Kodiak as the area, and he positioned his forces accordingly, hundreds of miles away from where the Japanese were going to be. So don't ever forget that in the end, the commander's got to make the tough call. And we were blessed in the Pacific to have great commanders like Admiral Nimitz and Admiral Spruance and Admiral Fletcher. Another thing I take away, there was a great quantity and boldness. Admiral Nimitz was a bold commander. And if you are a flag officer in the United States Navy today, you have heard the CNO Admiral Greener tell every one of us, be bold. He tells us this constantly. Admiral Nimitz lived it. And we are so fortunate that he did. And finally, just a couple other lessons. Midway, to me, highlights the power of a team, about the ability of Station Hypo and what the cryptologic team was doing with its integrated intelligence professionals over at Pearl Harbor, and what then Lieutenant Commander Edwin Layton was doing as the Fleet Intelligence Officer up here, about how we managed to bring that all together into one team. And another insight I take is those teams sometimes can be filled with people that you wouldn't necessarily think are going to be there when you really need them. Joseph Rochefort failed to select for commander his first time. Think about our culture today, which generally seems to think if you fail to select for a rank, ooh, there must be something wrong. Joseph Rochefort didn't quit. Edwin Layton believed in him, and Admiral Nimitz believed in him. We took a band from the USS California to augment the manpower at Station Hypo in the immediate aftermath of Pearl Harbor. A lot of people would have said, musicians, what are they going to do to help us break Japanese codes? That's not the way then Commander Rochefort looked at it. I need people, and I need people who are willing to work as a team. And if they're willing to do that, we can do great things. We took a young then ensign. We talk about Admiral Showers now. Admiral Showers got here in February of 1942 as a 22-year-old ensign. He was originally sent here to do counterintelligence work, and then was made available to Station Hypo. In the Battle of Midway, then Ensign Showers spent 72 hours on station manning a pneumatic tube immediately behind Joseph Rochefort's desk, taking messages out of the tube and turning to then Commander Rochefort and saying, boss, this is something important. I think you need to see this. Or, hey, we need to plot this. And he was on station for 72 continuous hours. It's also not about numbers. In June of 1941, when Commander Rochefort reported aboard, Team Hypo was 30 people. And a year later, in the immediate aftermath of Pearl Harbor, it had grown to 100. Still pretty small compared to what we think about today when you think about intelligence and cryptologic teams today. And look what he managed to do. So it's not about numbers. It's about people and a team that can work together. And the United States Navy was blessed in 1942 to have a team of cryptologic and intelligence professionals who knew how to work together. And we are fortunate. In the Navy of today, 70 years later, that continues. And it is what makes us successful. It is what generates operational advantage for us. And we are fortunate as a Navy to have a team that's so committed. Lastly, we're going to talk about Admiral Showers, and you're going to hear him talk about the battle that he experienced here. But what is most powerful to me about Max Showers, and to be honest, the reason why I wanted to meet him for a long time, it isn't what he did during the war. It isn't what he did while he was in uniform. To me, it's what he did 10 years after he retired in the 1980s, after he finished a 10-year career with the Central Intelligence Agency. He decided that he was in a position to change a wrong. He did something that Admiral Ernest King did not want to do. He did something that Admiral Chester Nimitz tried to do and failed. He managed to convince the United States Navy and ultimately the President of the United States that there was value in recognizing the contributions of Joseph Rochefort in an appropriate way that had been denied Admiral, or then Commander Rochefort, ultimately Captain Rochefort, during the course of the war. And he pushed for the Defense Service Medal to be awarded to Joseph Rochefort. And he was there with Ronald Reagan and the Rochefort family in June of 1986 when the President of the United States provided that recognition to a great naval hero. And he never quit. The thing I am proudest about Admiral Showers is he reminds us about the power of a team and the fact no matter how long or when we were part of that team, our obligation to each other never, ever ends. And when he was in the position to do the right thing, that's all that mattered to him. And he never forgot his debts to his shipmates. We are all fortunate to have teammates like Max Showers. And there's so many of them today. So Mac, I just want to thank you for everything that you did, both here in 1942 for the course of your distinguished career, but most important to me, what you did for a shipmate long after the guns were silent. Thank you very much.